sponsor or any candidates. This evening's forum is provided to give you the opportunity to learn about the candidates running for the Minnesota Senate and House. Tonight, the rules for the forum are each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement to state their experience, their platform, and their objectives. And then there'll be a question and answer period, and that's where you may have been getting little note cards as you came in from the students from Wyzetta and also Jewish Community Action, who are giving you a chance to ask the candidates questions, written questions, which will be brought to me later. There's no guarantee I can get all the questions asked. Questions will be answered by the candidates in rotating order. And a 15-second warning will be given to the candidates, and they'll have 1 minute to respond to questions. And then they'll be given a 2-minute closing statement. So the one thing for candidates, please finish your sentence quickly once you see that stop sign. And if you could just hold it up, so that's what it's going to look like. And again, no reference of personal nature will be tolerated. Person's public record may be examined, but not their character. These forms are made available to encourage the voting public to focus on the issues, not on the personalities. And since the Candidates Night is designed to provide a nonpartisan setting for undecided voters to hear all the positions, we ask that there be no demonstrations of booing or clapping in support or opposition to the candidates or their positions, and that all candidates be allowed their time in the spotlight. At the end of the evening, we'll thank all the candidates with our applause. And I think this is a great time to give them applause. Let me just introduce them here. To my left, I have Paul Anderson running for Minnesota Senate District 44, and Deb Calvert. And then we have from Minnesota House 44A, we have Sarah Anderson and Ginny Cleaborn. And for Minnesota House 44B, we have John Applebaum and Patti Meier. And let's give them a round welcome. I know what it's like. Okay. So we are going to begin with our opening statements, and we'll begin with Paul Anderson.
Well, good evening. I'm Paul Anderson, and over the course of my career, I've interviewed over 100 people for different positions in different jobs I've had. In the interview process, I look at their experience and want to know about their character, what makes them tick. I want to know about their relationships, how they work with others, how they treat others, and about their competencies, what they've achieved and their successes. In the end, I want to make sure that I can trust this person with the decisions that are most important with the organization they're representing. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. This is personal to me. I grew up here. My family and I moved here 40 years ago from South Minneapolis. I went to Wyzetta High School. I had Miss McGarvey sitting in the second row there. She taught politics. I met my wife there. It's here where we bought a house and where we are raising our 2 girls. I also grew up in a family business, and that's where I really learned the core values of hard work, fiscal discipline, customer service, and a passion to serve the community you live in. I also learned that character, integrity, and honesty matter, and I really hope in today's environment that still matters. It's these values and principles that have driven me to a successful career in government and business and in the nonprofit sector, and also as a volunteer in many different community organizations, also as a coach and a mentor here. I was honored to serve as district director for one of my heroes, former Congressman Jim Ramstad, also as deputy chief of staff for a good friend and a good man in Governor Tim Pawlenty, and today I own my own consulting business. It's these experiences, core values, and principles that I will take with me to serve you at the Capitol, because we have some serious work to do. We need better health care, we need better education, we need better jobs, and we need better government. I'll work hard, I'll protect and defend your tax dollars, and I'll serve you in your interest. We have so much at stake for the future of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we'll hear from Deb Calvert.
Thank you to the League and your partners for this opportunity. I'm Deb Calvert, and I'm running for State Senate. I'm on leave from Mitchell Hamlin School of Law, where I have supported the president and board for 5 years. Previously, I had the honor to work for Native Daughter Senator Amy Klobuchar, who embodies good governance. I have a music degree, and I'm a violin teacher by training. I ran my own home music lesson businesses as I followed my husband's firefighting and emergency management career. When some students could only afford to pay me in eggs, I started a nonprofit to provide the music enrichment they all deserved. People who grew up here are rightly proud of our district. Having lived all over the country, when an opportunity arose, I did my research and we chose to move here because it was an outstanding place to work and raise our 2 children. I appreciate what we have here. It's why I advocated for our public schools at the state legislature. It's why I decided to serve on the Minnetonka Planning Commission to balance the community's development needs with preservation of the natural amenities that make this such an outstanding place to live, and why I'm a proud member of the League and NCJW. My husband's service on 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina taught me it shouldn't take a national tragedy to pull us together to get things done. That's why I worked as campaign staff for candidates who would bring us together, and why I'm running for state senate. There are important things to do, and that's why I'm here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Now we'll hear from Sarah Anderson, District 44A.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Sarah Anderson. I represent the area of Plymouth, most of Plymouth, not all of it, and I have been blessed to be elected by the people of Plymouth 5 times. They have recognized the good work that I've done in working on things such as spurring job growth here in the state of Minnesota, as well as making sure our kids have a world-class education, and making sure that our government is smaller and smarter in their investments that they use your tax dollars with. That has been my primary focus at the legislature. I've also had my work recognized by several different organizations, one of them being the Aspen Institute. I was named one of the Rodell Fellows, an organization that prides itself on getting people together to work across party lines. I've also been endorsed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the Twin West Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. I've also been recognized by Mazone, which is a Jewish hunger solution organization, for my work on helping make sure that people have kids go to school and have food in their bellies and so they can learn, as well as making sure that families have access to good quality food that they can provide to their families. That's just a snippet of some of the things that I've been able to accomplish at the legislature. Working on spurring job growth, trying to make it so that smaller businesses can thrive and succeed here in the state of Minnesota, and making sure that our kids, when they graduate from college, have good paying jobs that they can go to at the end of the day. Plymouth is blessed to have really good med tech companies here in our area, and by helping them out with the research and development tax credit, that's been huge for them. On the education front, making sure that our schools are well funded and making sure that our class sizes are smaller. I've been a huge advocate for that. I carried the legislation on early childhood learning scholarships. And then also just making sure that we get rid of waste and fraud and abuse of your tax dollars, and that has been a focus as chair of the State Government Finance Committee. So I just want to say thank you again for having me here tonight, and I look forward to the forum.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from John Applebaum, District 44B. Oh, Jenny Cleveland, I am so sorry.
That's okay. It's always great to be a first-time candidate. All of you have received all of my mailers. Just know it's about building brand name recognition, so I don't get forgotten. We have to have a little fun, right? It's serious business. I am Jenny Cleveland, and I'm proud to be a first-time candidate. In Plymouth, we work really hard, and we do care about each other, and that's why I'm running. I've been a mediator for many, many years. I have sat at the table and listened to thousands of mediations. And my job is to help people come together to build a brighter future for themselves or for their organizations. That's what I do. That's my skill set. I'm the proud mother of 3 children who graduated from Wayzata schools. They went on to graduate from the University of Minnesota. One is obtaining her PhD in food science and will soon hopefully be returning to Minnesota. And my youngest is at Rutgers, working on a master's degree in urban planning and urban design. And my oldest is in the financial industry, and he works for Wells Fargo in St. Louis, Missouri. For many years, I've come to this building, and I've worked with the leadership of this city. to help them make things better for our community. And that's what I would like to do in the state legislature. There are so many things that we can be proud of, but there's still work to be done, and that's what I hope to do. I hope to advocate and bring to our community real state funding for our educational system. I don't believe that 2003 should be the benchmark as we go forward in 2017. I believe that we have the ability to spark leadership and innovation in our community, and that's what I'd like to do by helping our small businesses grow and build their dream companies. Thank you, and I look forward to representing you in 2017.
Thank you very much, Jenny Claiborne. Now we will begin with John Applebaum, who's running for 44 Bs.
Thank you, and good evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, Jewish Community Action, and the National Council of Jewish Women for hosting this event, and really appreciate everyone out there for participating. I'm John Applebaum, and I'm seeking my second term as state representative for District 44B, my hometown district, which includes Plymouth, Minnetonka, and Woodland. By profession, I'm a lawyer who specializes in real estate transactions, and I practice law at a Minnetonka law firm. More importantly, I am newly married to my wonderful wife, Kate, who would be here tonight, but she's flying back from New York City, where she attended International Bridal Week, looking for the best new designs for her store. You see, being married to me has been such a wonderful experience for her that she decided to open her very own bridal shop so she could extend that wondrous experience to other women. It's called Annika Bridal Boutique, and it's located on 50th in France, right across from Lund, so be sure you stop in and say hello. You know, when I first ran for this seat back in 2014, I vowed to make education my top priority at the legislature. True to my word, I've delivered more money for our local school districts, championed critical funding for early childhood education, and created the nation's first student loan debt tax credit. I also promise to be responsible with your hard-earned tax dollars. Along with advocating for tax relief for student loan debtors and their families, I've always voted to lower taxes for families, small businesses, and veterans. Finally, my efforts to protect your property tax dollars have been recognized by Reform Property Taxes Minnesota with its 2015 Legislative Award. Lastly, I pledged that my votes would reflect responsible environmental stewardship, and I'm proud that Clean Water Action has designated me as an environmental hero with a 100% score.
Thank you.
I'm honored to represent my hometown community and look forward to this evening. Thank you.
All right, and now we'll hear from Patti Meier.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone that's here in the audience. It's really great to see so many people coming out to hear about the candidates and the issues this year. I would also like to thank the League and the other sponsors for putting this event on tonight. I have been a resident of the Plymouth side of the district for 40 years. I am an insurance professional in the risk management area, and I'm married. I have 2 grown children and 1 grandson. And as a long-time Minnesota resident, I do know that we have a lot to protect in this state. The motto of the state, or the slogan, or the nickname is the North Star. And right now, I feel that the North Star has lost some of its twinkle. And we've got some challenges in this state that we need to address. And we need leaders and legislators that are honest and have common sense and the ability to compromise, collaborate, and to forge solutions, basically to just start getting things done in St. Paul. My goal is always to listen, to learn, to lead, and to act with the will to do what is right for the district and for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, now we begin the question and answer period, and I do have many questions. So how we're going to do this is rotating, and we're going to go in reverse order. So Patti will be the first to answer the question, and then you'll notice that we're going to rotate between the seat that they are running for, just to make it fair so that no one person always gets asked first. So, Patti, here's the question. If elected, what would be your transportation priorities, and how would you fund them?
Transportation is a very important issue in this state. Part of the transportation issue, of course, is roads and bridges, and we need to fund those, we need to fix those, we need to expand those. 98% of the people in the state use the roads, and it's just not the individuals and their vehicles, it's also commerce. That's how we move the goods from the farm and from the businesses to get them to the stores, so it's an important issue. I feel that the funding of it is something that we have some mechanisms in place now that we could draw on to pay for the roads. And I know there was a bonding bill that didn't get passed that had some provisions for roads and bridges. Also, when we talk about transportation, we have to look at all sorts of means of transportation, whether we're dealing with rapid bus systems, if we're dealing with trying to get businesses to get employees to work from home. It's a very important issue.
Thank you very much. And then we will hear next from John Applebaum, and then it will be Deb Calvert, just to kind of give you a sense.
Transportation and
Same
housing
question.
fund. One of this past session's many disappointments was the lack of a transportation bill. I'm sure you all remember 2 years ago at this time, candidates from both parties wanted to talk about how transportation was their top priority, and this is going to be the transportation session, and there's nothing more important than transportation. Well, of course, nothing happened. The House Republican majority's proposals were so extreme and unreasonable that ultimately compromise was unable to occur. It is considered paramount by both sides that we come up with $600 million in order to fund our transportation system per year over the next 10 years. We have to keep all options on the table. Having said that, I did not vote for a gas tax. I do not think that's the right answer, but we have to consider options including bonding and other sources in order to pay for what our area needs, and that includes transit, by the way. Republicans seem not to value transit, but...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, then we will go to Deb Calvert. Same question.
Transportation is a constitutionally mandated function of state government, as is education. And I believe that in our district, the city councils, the City Council of Minnetonka and all of the related city councils in St. Louis Park, Hopkins, and Eden Prairie that would be affected by Southwest Light Rail want Southwest Light Rail, as does the chamber. And so it is a priority for me because it will get people off the same arteries that goods and services travel. So that is one thing that I would like to see done. And of course, we have to maintain our roads and bridges and start planning for capacity. In terms of how we are going to fund, I believe that every option should be on the table and only be eliminated if it has no merit. And so I'm going to put it all on the table and we'll only eliminate them as they don't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
Oh, no one likes to sit in traffic, and we need a transportation system that's going to allow us to spend more time at home with our families and at work and at school and our places of worship. Unfortunately, due to the gridlock at the Capitol, we haven't seen the investment in transportation these last couple of years. And we've all seen that unfold. It's unfortunate. So we need to make investments in a comprehensive transportation plan that addresses the needs for our roads, our bridges, and our transit system. And we need to do it in a bipartisan way, and we need to get it done. We need to get it done fairly soon because everything's ripped up, but we need to make progress on this issue.
Thank you. And then we'll hear from Jenny Cleveland.
Transportation is something that, if we do it well, we don't really give credit to the people who have designed it. Unfortunately, it has not been done well for quite some time. When we talk about gridlock in our capital, we have to understand that these are important bills that must be passed, and we don't have to look much further than the last 2 years. The biggest difference between my opponent and I is that my opponent has not ever voted for a bonding bill. You cannot do roads, bridges, and transit if you take bonding off the table. That is the biggest difference between my opponent and I when it comes to transportation. I have sought the advice of our city council and our leadership here to see what would they like. They are asking for help in developing bus rapid transit, and that's what I said I would help them do.
Thank you very much. Sarah Anderson.
Thank you. Well, in the last legislative session, we passed a $5.5 billion investment in transportation. That includes both roads and bridges and transit. I've been recognized by Suburban Bus Transit for award for my work on suburban bus transit here in the area of Plymouth and the suburban districts in Plymouth, Grove, and Amesbury, and everywhere else. So my work has been recognized by the suburban transit folks for helping provide that transit to people in this area. On top of that, what my opponent just said is flat out wrong. I have voted for bonding bills. The bonding bills that focus on infrastructure. I don't support bonding bills, though, that spend $90 million in a Senate office building that's not needed. If she wants to support that, she can go ahead, but I think that your tax dollars are more valuable than that. On top of that, the Republicans put forth a transportation plan of $7 billion investment over a 10-year period. Unfortunately, Democrats in both the Senate and the governor's office refused to even consider that. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Our next question, and we will begin with Sarah Anderson. What is your stance on expanding Minnesota's gun violence prevention legislation to require criminal background checks on gun purchases made at gun shows, online, and by individuals? Why or why not?
So in this last legislative session, we did a couple of things as part of the public safety bill. We said that if you are not eligible to own a gun legally, you are not also eligible to have ammunition within your possession. On top of that, if you look on the federal level, much of this is dictated by federal law. And under federal law, you cannot sell a gun at a gun show if you're doing it for profit. So any of those individuals that are at a gun show that are doing it as a business, they are regulated by the national, it's called NICS. They have to have all of their transactions that go through the background check already. That's already in state law. Also, Minnesota and federal law says that you cannot possess guns on any school property or at a daycare facility or any of these different places. So we have the protections in place here in Minnesota. Where I have focused my emphasis on is mental health and making sure that individuals have access to mental health, because people that commit these kind of crimes are people that are suffering from mental illness, and that's what we need to address. That's the key to stopping gun violence.
Thank you very much. Jenny Cleveland.
Closing the background check loophole is one of my top priorities. I'm proud to be endorsed by the police, and our police officers are asking for this to be closed. Domestic assault is a violent crime that happens in a moment of passion. Suicide happens in a moment of despair. We need to make sure that guns are only in the hands of people who are capable of handling the responsibility of gun ownership. I support the Second Amendment. I have no problem with the Second Amendment. But our police officers and our community safety comes first.
Thank you. Then we'll go to John Applebaum.
I believe that in Minnesota we need to pass legislation that requires universal background checks on all gun sales. We need to close the gun show loophole and ensure that every single person that is purchasing a gun has been vetted and that guns do not get in the hands of people who should not have them. Having said that, I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm not advocating for taking anyone's guns away. However, despite what you may hear, gun violence is at an all-time high, and one of the many reasons people like living in our community is that it's generally pretty safe. And I intend to keep it that way. We need to make sure that only law-abiding citizens can possess firearms, preferably as few as possible. And that's why the Police and Peace Officers Association has endorsed my candidacy. I'm proud of it, and I'll continue to make sure that you guys are all safe.
Thank you. And Patty Meier.
I'm under the impression that when it comes to background checks, that right now we are doing background checks on guns that are purchased by a licensed dealer. That is the law, and that's what's happening now. Where we may have the problem is that you have a person-to-person sale, family member, they're not required to do a background check. And there's always the criminals that are on the corner that are making the deal. And that I don't know what a background check is going to do to stop that transaction. I am concerned with people who have a mental health condition. I really would like to see guns, something we could do to keep the guns away from those people. But other than that, I think we're fine.
Thank you. And we'll hear from Paul Henderson.
We all want to live in and prosper in a safe and secure community. I want that for my family and my girls. I want that for you and your loved ones. I support the Second Amendment and the constitutional right for law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms. But let me be very clear. I do not, and I will work to make sure that criminals, terrorists, and those with mental illness do not have guns. I do not support guns in schools. And on issues like this, any major public safety issue, I will work closely and have the relationships already with Sheriff Stanek, with Chief Goldstein here in Plymouth, with Chief Borboom in Minnetonka, and Chief Johnson in DPIC.
Thank you. Deb Calvert.
My husband is an avid sportsman and has been a lifelong, very responsible gun owner, and I believe in our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. But we all have stories, and one of the stories that I have is that one of my daughter's high school friends, Topaz Cooks, lost her father in the accent signage shooting. And we all have stories like this in our families. So I am in favor of background checks, closing the gun show loopholes, because in my heritage, there's a saying that if you save one life, you save the world entire. If it saves one life, it's worth it to me. And there's evidence that background checks to get permits in Connecticut, that when that was required, the gun homicides went down 40% and 15% reduction in suicides. And when they repealed a similar law in Missouri, gun homicides went up 23% and suicides went up 16%.
Thank you very much. I'm feeling bad having to cut you off. I seem to have a lot of information. We're going to ask an education question, and we will begin with Deb Calvert. What are your priorities for education policy and school funding?
My priorities for education policy, first of all, we have to make sure that our youngest children are starting off right. So I would like to target dollars to those most at risk for falling behind academically, because we know that there's a 16% inflation-adjusted return on investment in quality early childhood education. That's one. We have to keep our schools strong. One of the ways that we can do that is by funding mandates that truly help our students and getting rid of ones that don't. One of the ones that does help students is special education, but the federal government only funds, in general, 17% of the commitment out of the 40% that they have said that they would fund, and the state has a percentage that they're supposed to fund. We have to fund that. And the other thing that I think is very important is keeping college affordable and accessible to keep our educated workforce something that attracts major employers.
Thank you. All right, Paul Anderson.
Well, we're really fortunate to live in Senate District 44, where we have 5 outstanding school districts in Wayzata, and in Hopkins, and in Minnetonka, and in Osseo and Robbinsdale. We're really fortunate, and I am grateful that I graduated from great education. My priority in this is first working on trying to improve this status we've had for far too long on the opportunity gap or achievement gap, as it's often talked about. I also want to work on getting the funding, which the funding situation is kind of crazy, but getting the funding most centered on getting to the classroom. I think we need to focus on supporting our great teachers, and then with regards to getting more local controls to our school district and making sure we don't have unfunded mandate that really messes up budgets as well.
All right, thank you. Then we're going to hear from Ginny Cleveland.
Education, we're talking about priorities of policy and school funding. The biggest priority that I have for school funding for schools is for every child to succeed. And by that I mean we need to help close the cross-subsidy gap that we have when we're having special education funding being taken from our general education budget. I have heard repeatedly that my opponent says that she funds schools. She has been in the legislature for the last 10 years, and in those 10 years, we have constantly had our funding reduced in an inflation-adjusted manner. We cannot pit one family against another when it comes to education. My top priority is for every child to receive the quality education that they deserve in Plymouth, no matter which school they attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah Anderson.
So this past legislative cycle, we increased school funding by $605 million over base. What that means is we get more money to our schools in Wayzata and the Robbinsdale and the Osseo School District. On top of that, I carried legislation that would make sure that we increase funding by $48 million for early learning scholarships. These are scholarships that are dedicated to kids that are at the most risk for academic failure, quite honestly. And by putting those scholarships in place, we're giving them the leg up, the advantage that they need to be successful in their long-term economic or educational career. On top of that, we also had school readiness, which helps all kids. We also put an emphasis on literacy, which is a very huge issue. K through 3 literacy, if you can get a child to have a proficient in literacy through that age period, they do better in math, they do better in everything in their school career. So we have done some really good work, I think, on education. Is there more to be done? You bet there is. But I think this last legislative package was pretty good.
Thank you. All right, Patti Meier.
Well, I think all of us want the best education possible for our children. And in Minnesota, that is one of the 2 items in the Constitution that's required for the state to be responsible for. Our budget's $41 billion, and 40% of that goes to education. And I think we need to let our teachers, our administrators, our local school boards have a say in how some of that money is spent. I am a proponent for continuing to increase money to go to the schools because I believe, too, that it's a very important thing. When we're talking about the achievement gap, I think we've got to attack that problem from the early pre-K side as well as come up with ways to handle the kids now that are in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade that are battling the achievement gap. And maybe we need to take some of the best practices and have a conversation with a diverse group of educators and counselors in school, parents, leaders, to see what we can do to take care of that.
All right, we're going to have another question. We have John Applebaum here. Sorry.
That's okay. What's that expression? You learn something new every day. At this debate, I've learned a couple of things I hadn't heard before. Representative Anderson, number one, that she passed a $5.5 billion transportation bill that obviously never happened. And she just mentioned that she delivered $605 million in new funding for education, which didn't happen. The House Republicans' bill was for $157 million in new education spending, which would have led to layoffs all across the state of Minnesota. Superintendents all over the place were saying how disappointed it was. Ultimately, thanks to me and my colleagues and the Senate Democrats, we stood tough, and the governor stood tough, and we ultimately delivered $525 million for our K through 12 schools, which still is resulting in some deficiencies. But I can promise you, under DFL House leadership and under my leadership, we're going to make sure our schools are properly funded for all pre-K students, for all K-12 students, and we're going to actually make college affordable by freezing tuition, reducing student loan debt, and making sure everyone that wants to go to a college can afford to do so.
Thank you very much. All right, and this next question, again, we start with John. Kind of a long question. Racial disparities in Minnesota include home ownership, small business development, education, healthcare, and incarceration. Last year, Governor Dayton and the legislators provided additional funding for small business development and first-time homebuyers. What efforts will you support to reduce racial disparity?
Well, I support the governor's proposal and acknowledge that this is a problem. We need to do a better job of being more inclusive in all facets of society, and I believe that begins with education. We need to teach tolerance. Our public schools have to stress how important it is that we treat everyone with respect, that not one person is better than anyone else, no matter what they look like, their gender, their sexual orientation, anything. So I think it starts as an educational issue. At the same time, it's delusional to think throwing money at a problem that's been in existence since the beginning of time is going to solve the problem. So it starts with education. We have to do a better job. I think some funds will help when it comes to things like small business development and housing, but it's an institutional problem that we need to address at the earliest outset.
Thank you. Patti Meier.
This is a problem that can be fixed. I think we need to concentrate on jobs. If someone has a job, someone's making a living, someone has pride in themselves and their workmanship, they can take that pride and they can buy a house, they can take care of their family. So we have to provide the vehicle to give those people the skills needed to be able to earn a living and to go out and make things happen in their communities. Maybe we need to also work within the communities, talking to the leaders in the communities, and getting people together to address this. I know there's, I think it's the North Side Achievement Zone that has been very successful, and maybe we need to do more of that type of stewardship in the communities.
Thank you. Deb Calvert.
There's so many things that we can do. I'm sorry.
Paul Anderson. No, it is you. It's you. You're number 3.
Is it me?
It's you. You totally blew it. You're number 3. Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's so many things that we can do to address racial disparities. I applaud the governor's efforts. One of the things that I would like to do is to invest in mass transit to connect people who live in job deserts with the good paying jobs that are here, for instance, in the West Metro. Investing in educational programs that are proven to work, like AVID, to help junior high and high school kids graduate, and invest in those early childhood and family education programs to help close the achievement gap so these children can succeed for a lifetime. To promote community relations programs like the one that I participated in, police citizens academies, so that police can become aware of the needs of the residents, and residents can become aware of the things that the police face when they are trying to protect our communities and improve relations there. And I'd like to see some sentencing reform guidelines to keep dangerous criminals behind bars, but allow people who make mistakes to plug into the economy.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
Well, someone said that we're the land of equal opportunity, but not necessarily equal outcomes, and this is a problem. My family and I have been committed for years to volunteer in the community and loaves and fishes to help feed the hungry. Families moving forward to help clothe and give housing focusing to families in crisis and transition. Minnesota Teen Challenge to help break the chains of addiction. And we're also a host family for an organization called Safe Families that also provides respite for families in crisis. So we see this, and it's a real problem. So my priorities are on education and on jobs, and focusing on as much as we can healthy families so we can work on this issue.
Thank you. Sarah Anderson. So I mentioned earlier my work on the early learning scholarships. That is hoping, our goal is to help close the achievement gap. And by getting kids at a young age, getting quality care so that they're prepared for kindergarten and can succeed. On top of that, I have worked extensively with Mazone, the Jewish Hunger Solution program, on a couple of different things. Making sure that when students go to school, they're not at school hungry, that they have breakfast, that they have lunch, and that they're prepared and ready to learn. On top of that, I am also part of the Healthy Eating Solutions effort. I passed legislation that makes farm goods, produce, healthy eating available to families of lower economic status. So opening up our farmers market and making that a tool that's available to them so that they have healthy eating. But I think the big thing that we haven't talked about yet is just overall healthcare and the cost of healthcare and the fact that Meier is failing miserably, and that we need to do a better job in making sure that people can afford the care so that when they need treatment, they can go to the doctor and get the care that they need.
Very much. All right, and this next question, we will begin with Ginny Cleveland. I've got to put this pen down. I'm checking them off before, sorry.
That's all right. One of the things that I've been a long-time human rights and civil rights advocate. I've done it for decades. And one of the things that we don't really like to say is that we do have racial disparities that are based on systemic systems that have failed a good portion of our society. That's a fact. The other thing that we don't like to talk about is systemic disinvestment in certain communities. That also is a fact. One of the things that I noticed in this last legislative session, and one of the reasons I've entered the race, is exactly that, systemic disinvestment. So with that, I mean things like the House proposal. The original proposal was to cut $1.2 billion out of Health and Human Services. That hurts those at the lowest economic advantage in our society. And also I would like to mention that there was a systemic proposal to cut the jobs and economic development by $11 million in the House this year as well. You can't say that you're for lifting people up if you are systemically disinvesting in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jenny, this next question you start with. I just got this question here. This is a criminal justice question. Mass incarceration and drug sentencing have become hotly debated issues, as many individuals are receiving long sentences for minor drug offenses, disproportionately affecting people of color. Many believe that what is really needed is more mental health, chemical dependency, and diversion programs. What is your position on drug courts and sentencing reform, and why?
This is a place where we have great opportunity to shine as a community. When we look at the incarceration rates, they are skewed to persons of color. That's also a fact. We have an opportunity to use the drug courts not to lock people away, but to allow people to have intervention programs, just as we do with the veterans courts when people have suffered trauma in the war zones. We can do that for people who are addicted to many different types of drugs. I do believe that there's opportunity to work with our mental health community, to work with our criminal justice community, and I participate in a group with the Minnesota FBI where we bring those stakeholders to the table to talk about best practices. And I would like to see that broadened into the larger community. It costs $15,000 a year just to have a bed in an institution to lock someone away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sarah Anderson.
So I mentioned earlier that we've put a lot of emphasis on mental health needs here in the state of Minnesota the last 2 years. In the Health and Human Services program alone, we made sure that clinics are receiving mental health grants so that they can be better prepared to handle individuals that come in for urgent care. On top of that, we also provided emergency mental health funding for folks that find themselves at a desperate moment, family members that are bringing in their loved one and they just don't know what to do. So we put that as part of it. But I think what is really key is we put in place training to our teachers, because what we're finding more and more often is that our school teachers are facing kids that are just developing their mental illness or just recognizing this. So we want to make sure that the teachers are prepared, so one, that they can identify it, two, that they have the resources available to help those kids seek it so that they can live a normal life and a healthy life. So that's been all part of the package over the last 2 years in both the Health and Human Services bill and the education on mental health, and I supported both.
Thank you so much. Next one, Dave Meier.
This is a serious problem that we have as far as the chemical dependency and the need for drug courts and mass incarcerations. People that have a serious dependency problem, I don't think belong in prison. They belong in a place that have experts and people who care for them and people who are skilled to help them break that addiction. If we don't break the addiction, they're going to be back in the courts, they're going to be back in the jail, they're going to be back in the emergency room. So I think as a state, we owe it to the people to help them get stronger, get better, and to make this a better situation. We have enough criminals, we have jails right now that are overflowing in prisons, and I think we can handle these people in a different format.
Thank you. John Applebaum.
Well, I don't think low-level drug offenders should be in prison. They shouldn't be taking up police time and police resources, which ultimately we pay for. It's absolutely ridiculous how much time and effort this failed war on drugs is costing not only the United States but here in Minnesota. We need to be concentrating on actually getting the violent offenders. We need to start concentrating on prosecuting people who are having guns illegally and causing harm in our communities. We need to be making sure that we can keep terrorism away from our communities. You read the paper every single day, and Minnesota is a hotbed for that type of activity. That's what we should be doing. So when it comes to someone with a low amount of marijuana on their person, that person shouldn't be in jail. It's just a complete waste in all senses of the word, and we should be focusing on bigger issues.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
And mental health issues have become a major situation that affected our communities here, and it's something I'm proud to work closely with Congressman Ramstad in my time as his district director as he fought for this. Many families struggle with it. Our own family and loved ones close to me have struggled with mental health issues, and I've worked with veterans that have struggled with this on coming back from combat. We're seeing more and more how it's impacting our society, and we need to work together and find ways to address this problem and make sure that funding is appropriate, because we do have a situation where, whether it's at St. Peter or other places, we don't have the capacity. We need to make sure the funding is there.
Thank you. Deb Calvert.
I work at Mitchell-Allen School of Law, and I've had the privilege of coming to know some very distinguished judges and attorneys and law professors who, many of whom agree that we do need sentencing reform and that drug courts can provide the kind of guidance for diversion programs to provide restorative justice and the kind of mental health care, chemical dependency care that people who have addiction need to get out of their situation and not reoffend. And the other thing that is very important to understand is that we need to provide economic justice so that people don't turn to drugs to begin with and end up in the system. So we need to have the kinds of racial justice and economic justice in our communities to make sure that opportunity is there starting at the youngest age through their adulthood.
Thank you very much. For our next question, and we will begin with Paul Anderson this time. Small businesses are the foundation of Minnesota's economy. What experience do you have working with small businesses, and what steps would you take as a legislator to support small businesses and help them grow?
Thank you. Well, this is obviously close to home. When I own my own business, and I also grew up in a small business with my family still involved in running it, and it's really hard to be a small business owner in Minnesota. I think you talk to anybody, and I've had many conversations where small business owners are just pushed and pushed and pushed on taxes and regulations that they're ready to drop their keys and walk away. So we have an unfriendly climate here for businesses, especially the last year. If you look at the metrics, we are a very good place to do business, but when you look under the hood and see on the cost effective or the cost of doing business here, we're way at the bottom. We have to work on reducing business property taxes and regulations to invite more businesses to start, be innovative, and keep going. We can't lose our small businesses in Minnesota.
All right. Deb Calvert.
Well, probably the most important way that we can help our small businesses, according to the people that I speak to at the doors, and I've spoken to many hundreds at this point, is to address health insurance premiums. And it is something that we really do need to grapple with, and quickly. So we do need to get a hold of the reinsurance or high-risk pool to make sure that premiums are affordable for our small businesses. We have to work on on property taxes for small businesses and make them manageable, because it really is pricing people out of their properties. And there are other business taxes that could help level the playing field. And in addition, I think we have to continue to invest in education, because it's our educated workforce that can support our small businesses. We can partner small businesses with community and technical colleges to make sure that they can hire people that have the skill set that they need.
Thank you very much. Sarah Anderson.
So I'm endorsed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the Twin West Chamber of Commerce, and the National Federation of Independent Businesses. These are organizations that are made up of small businesses across the metro area, Twin West in particular, in this area. And I'm glad to have their support. And the reason why they support me is my work on property tax relief for our businesses. As we've heard that all the candidates so far have said, that is a key issue for them, and that's the number one issue I hear about small business owners when I go door to door. On top of that, healthcare. MNsure has driven up the cost of premiums for our small businesses astronomically. The average increase per year for a family of four has been $4,800. That's per year. Prior to this, they were not seeing those kind of increases. Our leadership has asked for Governor Dayton to hold a special session to address this issue. It's an urgent need. We need to get this taken care of. We also need to look at the proposals that we already put in place. We asked Governor Dayton to ask for a federal waiver so these small businesses could shop around for other health insurance outside of here, and he has yet to do that. That was something that we passed into law.
All right, and then we go to Jenny Cleveland.
Small business is the backbone of our community. Plymouth has a great initiative called Plymouth Proud, and I am happy to be able to support Plymouth Proud initiatives with our city. The thing that I would like to say about economic development and healthcare costs is my opponent is sitting next to me, having just served 10 years. These are not new issues. These are issues that have been ongoing for a long time. Whether we're talking about healthcare costs, hello, this is not new. It has been going on for a long, long time. Economic development. She states that she supports economic development, yet she voted against the economic development programs in House File 729, which help support our small businesses and gave them job creation grants and funding to help them grow their businesses. Thank you.
John Applebaum?
Well, I'm from a family of small business owners and entrepreneurs from both my mother's side and my dad's side. My grandfathers, who passed away, were small business owners who worked every single day up until the days that they each died. My mom, who's in the audience, has had several small businesses in her life. My sister, who's not here, has a small business selling wipes for your device. It's called Spruce & Co. I feel like I'm Trump here promoting all these companies, but Sprucies, they're called. Anyway, they're really terrific. And my wife's store, as I mentioned earlier, AnikaBridal.com. I understand the effort that it takes to run a small business. I grew up with it every single day. I know how hard they work. They're the backbone of our society. 95% of all jobs are related to small businesses. That's why I authored a bill that would provide refunds to small businesses for costs associated with collecting sales tax, and look forward to building upon that policy, and we'll do everything I can to ensure that our small businesses are in good shape.
Thank you. And then Patti Meier?
Feel like Shark Tank? Small business, as everybody said, is the backbone of our economy today. We must do whatever we can to encourage people to take that step and go out there with their dreams and what they want to accomplish and help them. The state seems sometimes not to be as encouraging as it should be for the small business owner. We've got barriers, we've got taxes, we've got healthcare costs, we've got property taxes, we've got a shortage perhaps of a qualified workforce. So there's a lot that we can do to help that small business owner. Because as you know too, a lot of the businesses today, it's their bread and butter, and that's their future. And we're losing some of these people to other states because they cannot make it here because of regulations and taxes.
Thank you. And Patti, you'll be the first to answer this next question. And the question is, please explain your perspective on the role of money in politics. Do you support full disclosure of the source of political contributions? Why or why not?
Well, that's an interesting question. We've got an awful lot of money in politics. And as you know, with this election year, billions of dollars that are involved in this. I wish we could get rid of it, really. But it's really, the Supreme Court decision is kind of a tax code issue. And it affects not just politics, it affects some nonprofit businesses too. So I'm okay with disclosing it, but I would like to see the unions also disclose. And in the bigger picture, if we could shrink the amount of money that's put into this, I'd be for that.
Thank you. John Applebaum.
Well, there is too much money in politics. I think we can all agree on that. I'm sure your mailboxes are being filled with very elaborate, expensive, and often untrue advertisements for or against certain candidates. And as Patti mentioned, that's perfectly legal according to Citizens United. So corporations and these outside groups can spend as much money as they want to influence our elections, which is really too bad. What we can do about it is to ensure that we know the sources of these groups' donors. There's a bill in the legislature this past couple years that we've been trying to pass that's called the Disclose Act, which simply says we want the donors to these groups to be disclosed to the public. I've voted for it every single time. Representative Anderson and every single one of the House Republicans voted against it time and time again, and that's really a shame.
Deb Calvert.
Well, I think transparency in government, which we desperately need, starts with campaigns, and I definitely would be in favor of legislation such as the Disclose Act. I think that groups outside of our state that don't understand our culture or our values have too much influence over the outcomes of our elections or try to influence our electorate, and I think it has to stop. So, and I also think that corporations are not people. People are people. So I would love to see Citizens United end, and I think we do need to get a grip on campaign finance reform and get money out of it. There is no reason on earth that state senator candidates should be raising $104,000 and that is spit in the ocean compared to what's being spent on my race and the other races around the state. So I'm absolutely for transparency in campaign financing.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
Well, I agree. Too much money is spent on campaigns. We spend far too much money trying to raise money, and then you have no control over what comes in and what's spent for and against. It's unfortunate, and I agree. So I would expect them to be transparent and open. But unfortunately, when you really look at the data, the money on this is coming from the unions. It's coming from unions and some significant Democrat funders. And so, may not agree with that, but there's articles to state the facts. At the Capitol, I'll work, this is going to have to be in a bipartisan way. This can't be a single party, a single agenda solution. We're going to have to work in a bipartisan way to get campaign reform done and do it for open and transparent laws going forward.
Thank you. Ginny Cleveland?
There is entirely too much money in political campaigns. When you are asking someone to give you $25 and $30 at a time, and you are trying to raise nearly $70,000 to run a first-time race, it's ridiculous. And so if you want to get special interests out, elect a legislator who will support the Disclose Act. Just like everything in government, I think it needs to be public, I think it needs to be transparent, and you, the voter, should know who is buying your election if that's what's happening. Now, on the flip side, I was fortunate to see some mail that came at me, giving me power for things I never knew that I was even involved with. And so I have decided I'm going to take ownership of that Senate office building and that outdoor toilet and whatever else they said that I was, making happen. And John Glenn, move over. I'm claiming your accomplishment too.
Thank you. Sarah Anderson.
If you ever don't want to get political mail, you should run for office, because I will tell you, all of us don't receive a single piece in the mail. They are all independent expenditures that we do not have control over, and that is the unfortunate part. Because we went the route that we went, independent expenditures is what driven a lot of our elections, not just here in this area, but across the state of Minnesota. And you are going to probably see for the first time $1 million campaigns in this state, and the candidate themselves maybe only put in $60,000. So you can imagine how frustrating that can be for the candidate themselves. What's frustrating for me, though, in this district, the only dark money that I've seen has come from Conservation Minnesota. It's a 501c4. They are the individuals that are not required to provide their donor list. And it was an attack against me. So far, that is the only piece that I've seen in this area that has used dark money.
Thank you very much. On our ballots this year, when you go to vote November 8th or earlier, if you're voting earlier, there's going to be a constitutional amendment question. And by the way, I'll be starting with Sarah Anderson for this. The question on the ballot will be, shall the Minnesota Constitution be amended to remove state lawmakers' power to set their own salaries and instead establish an independent, citizens-only council to prescribe salaries of lawmakers? Do you support this amendment, and why or why not?
Sure. This was passed when the Democrats were in control of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. And the reason why they passed it is that it is a guaranteed pay increase for legislators. But they don't have to claim it at all. And here's why. If you look at every other state that has gone to a commission, the pay for legislators has increased. In California, they increased their pay by over $100,000. So if you don't want us to make over $100,000, right now we make $31,000, you're going to want to vote against this amendment. Because otherwise, they are going to jack up the cost for you as a taxpayer, paying for politicians' pay. something that I have opposed, and I have voted against every pay increase while in office.
Jenny, please.
I actually would like to know what legislators are truly paid. We hear the $31,000 number thrown out quite a bit. Then we have the per diem, and then we have the health benefits, and then we have the child care benefits, and the list goes on and on and on. As a first-time candidate, legislative pay is something that there are two sides of this. If we want people who can represent us, who come from various backgrounds, we do need to think about what legislative pay should be. If we want people who are wealthy and can work part-time, then that's what we will get. If we want people who are only retired, then that's what we will get. Legislative pay, like everything else in the public, should be clear, it should be transparent, and people should know exactly what it is. Go try to find out what the expenses are for a legislator. It's almost impossible to find.
Thank you. Next will be John Applebaum.
I wish there was a fact checker at this event, because I just heard two other things that are completely not true. Number one, California's commission voted to lower its pay recently. And number two, California legislature is a full-time position, which you should know. And it's also the 9th largest economy in the entire world. So of course they're going to get paid more. Apples and oranges. Back to the question, I think that the amendment is fine. I expect it's going to pass. I was not involved in the legislature when it was brought on to be a question for the ballot. I think that legislators know what they're getting paid. No one does this for the money, I would hope, unless people are truly crazy. And I think the pay is fair. If it goes up, fine. If it goes down, fine. It's not going to keep me from running. Sorry.
Thank you. Patti Meier.
I think the situation here, I agree with John that it probably will pass, but I also know, and Jenny mentioned, that it's difficult to find people to do this. This doesn't have to be a high-paying job, but in some cases we may need to pay somebody a little bit more than the $31,000. There's good people out there who just can't do it because of the finances. But I think we as legislators should be able to sit down and talk about this and look each other in the eye and make the decision, are we worthy of a pay increase? Have we done the job that we were sent here to do? Do we deserve this, as opposed to somebody else making that decision for us? So in the past, it's been done within the group. I think they should be able to continue to do that.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
Let's go back to the question. This is a constitutional amendment to create a legislative pay commission. Excuse me. This is taking the ability for legislators to vote publicly for their pay raise or pay decrease and put it in a commission, and so it's not accountable to those in the legislature. So let's have the facts here and say, if we want open and transparent government, then the legislators should vote on their own pay raises or pay decreases. It should be public. And I don't support it.
Thank you. Deb Calvert.
There are many people that can't run because they can't afford it. And I think we need more people in government who have lived through and can relate to the issues faced by most people. My husband drives a car with over 250,000 miles on it. I refinanced my home just to help my kids pay back their college loans. $31,000 is halves my pay that I make at the law school where I work. That said, I think having an independent, nonpartisan panel of citizens decide and take it out of the partisan politics to decide what our legislature makes is a great way to depoliticize and be more sensible about how we pay our legislators, and I would be for it.
All right, thank you. Our next question, and we will begin with Deb Calvert. What issues are the most important to you? If you've already been in office, what specifically have you sponsored or co-sponsored? If you haven't been in office, what would be a particular issue that you believe needs to be addressed?
I believe that the achievement gap is probably one of the most important things that we need to address because it affects our entire society. And in order to do that, we have to invest in our families and our youngest children because it does have a return on investment. Actuaries use reading readiness as a way to determine how many prison beds we fund. And so to close the achievement gap, we get a huge financial return on investment. We have people that can contribute to our economy. And it ends up saving taxpayers money in the long run. The other thing, actually, there's one other thing, and that is we have a rapidly aging population, and we need to have the state legislature get a grip on the many issues associated with aging, the costs of health care, housing, transportation, and making sure that we have the resources so that we're not pitting our children against our seniors.
Thank you. Paul Anderson.
I'll go back to my opening when I talked about better health care, better business, better education, better jobs, and better government. We've got a lot of work to do, but one of the most pressing things, and didn't talk about it, is just plain gridlock and the ability for people to work together. I've done this my entire career. I was out of high school. I've done it my entire career through government and business and in the nonprofit sector. We need people to come together, to work together to get things done. On education, we need to make sure there's more funding going to the classroom. We need to support our schools as best as we can to make it continue to be leading in the state. And we also need to do everything we can to support our small businesses, because again, the business climate in this state is not friendly. So we need to make sure that our businesses are supported and we can reduce the overbearing business taxes and regulations.
Thank you. Judy Claiborne.
The reason I'm running is because I believe that we should have real funding for our state, for the priorities of our community, and representation for our community. That's the biggest issue facing us right now. Who will be our representative? Earlier I said that my representative did not vote for any bonding bills, and I was told that I had not spoken the truth. I would like for you to look at House File 380-2700-1752-2490-622, starting in year 2008 and marching in every other year thereafter. We cannot build a community that we want to have without adequate funding, whether it's for our schools, our transportation, or caring for our seniors. Those are the three issues that I have said all along that I am running for, and I would like to represent you, your ideas, your desires, your wishes, your dreams.
All right, and then we'll hear from Sarah Anderson.
So I focus a lot of time and effort on education and our economic policies that we have here in the state. As I mentioned earlier, I supported the early learning scholarships. I've carried that legislation, supported having smaller class sizes for our students. On the economic front, I have advocated for strong economic policies that help our small businesses thrive and grow here in the state of Minnesota. Unfortunately, my opponent supports ending any kind of benefit and tax expenditure that we have here in the state, which means that we would see a tax increase on every man, woman, and child in the state of Minnesota. Tax increases on your property, tax increases on food, on clothing, everything that you use as part of, including your income tax. So if you are looking for having a strong economy, that means that we need to give people the tools that they need in order to grow businesses here in the state of Minnesota. She will kill the economy, as the Democrats have done, and how we saw here today. We got our budget forecast, and we're now below our budget target by $96 million.
Thank you. Meier.
What issues that are important to me if I was over in St. Paul would be everything that has to do with the business climate and the economy. I believe that a strong economy makes everything work in the state. It's going to fund our businesses, it's going to fund our schools, it's going to fund our roads, our bridges, our transportation and transit issues. We have to be robust here and vibrant. As far as education goes, I believe that we should be maybe spending more of our energy on making sure that students are ready for the workforce. And if we have to bring back in some of the VOTEC and partner with businesses in town and get some apprenticeships going, get those kids out there, get them working and self-sufficient. I think we have a crisis with the healthcare situation in the state right now, and I feel very sorry for the people who are depending on Meier.
Thank you. John Applebaum.
Well, I've heard this a couple times, and just to be clear, Meier has absolutely nothing to do with the premium increases. That's like blaming Amazon because the microwave is more expensive now than it was last year. It's asinine that both my opponent and Representative Anderson are making this point. Like, read the newspaper. Anyway, the most important issue to me is education, as I mentioned before. We have to make sure that every single student in Minnesota can afford to invest in themselves and go to college. That's why I created the nation's first student loan debt tax credit. I'm very proud of my work in that. It would have provided $5,000 to everyone making principal or interest payments and their families here in Minnesota, and would have assisted 900,000 Minnesotans immediately. I'm looking forward to building upon that work and think there's no more important investment than the investment in our children and allowing them to continue their education and make the best of themselves.
Thank you very much. Thank you, candidates. You've put up with me, and you've done a beautiful job fielding all these questions with just 1 minute to respond. It's now time for closing statements, and you have 2 minutes each. We are going to do this in reverse order from the opening statement, so we will begin with Deb Calvert for her 2-minute closing statement.
Thanks again to the League and my friends at JCA and NCJW for organizing this fantastic forum. My husband and I did choose to move here with our kids because the quality of life is truly outstanding, and we fell in love with it here. As I've knocked on your doors, you've told me you want effective schools for all of our kids, that the skyrocketing cost of college is holding back a generation. You want a multimodal transportation system to keep you and the economy moving. You want to make sure our parents and we can age with dignity. You want a solution to the outrageous increases in health insurance premiums. You want bang for your buck, for your tax dollars, and most of all, you want legislators that cooperate to get the people's work done. So I do agree with my opponent. I think the most important thing we can work on is bipartisan cooperation. Former Mayor Karen Anderson of Minnetonka, a Republican, and former State Senator Steve Kelly, a Democrat, are my campaign co-chairs, and the entire Minnetonka City Council, Democrat and Republican, support me because they know I want to faithfully represent our swing district and bring people together. Senator Klobuchar endorsed me because she knows I have the same unparalleled work ethic, cooperative spirit, and I understand good governance. My experience supporting the Board of Trustees at the law school, as president of a statewide music teachers organization, as co-founder of a nonprofit, and on the Minnetonka Planning Commission, showed me that good ideas don't come with partisan labels. We need people who walk the walk, and I'm doing it. I'm Deb Calvert, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb Calvert. And her opponent, Paul Anderson.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everyone being here tonight and for those watching on TV. I'm running to serve you. I'm not running to serve a political party. I'm not running to serve an agenda. I'm not running to serve special interests. I'm not running to serve the unions. I'm running to serve you, the people, the communities where I grow up, and the businesses of Senate District 44. People are tired of politics as usual. Very tired. I believe my experience and core values have not only prepared me to represent our area at the Capitol, but prepared me to lead and get things done in a bipartisan, common sense way
just like my mentor and friend, Congressman Jim Ramstad, did for almost 30 years in this area. I'm proud of the support of so many people in our community, an area I truly love. I'm proud of the support and endorsements of friends and mentors like Congressman Jim Ramstad, Governor Al Quie, Governor Tim Pawlenty, Tom Horner, one of the leaders of the Independent Party here in Minnesota, Sheriff Stanek, and so many more. I'm also honored to have earned the support and endorsements of the Twin West Chamber, the Minnesota Chamber, and the National Federation of Independent Businesses, organizations representing thousands of businesses and workers here in Senate District 44 and across the state, and organizations that endorsed our Senator Terry Bonoff as well the last few elections. We have so much at stake for the future of Minnesota, and I'm hopeful we can make it better and brighter, but we have to get to work and get things done. We need to make sure we have a better healthcare system, a better education, better jobs, and better government. As I mentioned before, I will work hard on your behalf. I will protect and defend the taxpayer dollars that you give our government, and I will serve the best interests of the communities of Plymouth, Minnetonka, and Woodland. I hope to earn your vote on November 8th or before with early voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will hear from the candidates from House District 44A, and we'll begin with Jenny Cleveland.
Thank you for letting us be here tonight. It's a very important part of this process, so I just would like to say thank you first. I'm running for the State House to use my experience as a professional mediator. As a mediator, I bring people together to help solve conflict and to help them find better futures and to attain better outcomes. Together, we can create a better community and a better business environment. We can invest in our schools and spark our youngest learners and help those adult learners who are off to university and trade schools. We can help our small businesses succeed as well. We can listen to them, cut red tape, and pass a comprehensive transportation plan that gets both goods and services to market as well as employees to work. We can create an economy that works for our families. We can make child care more affordable, and we can reduce the cost of tuition. And our seniors, we can help them by reducing the cost of prescription drugs. We can set up systems that help them as they want to age in place in their own homes and in their own community. No political party has a monopoly on the good answers. We have to work together. That's why my skills as a mediator are so important at this time. The last session, we did see gridlock. There was no transportation bill, no tax bill, no bonding bill. I know the effects of conflict. It's frustration, it's counterproductive, and it does produce gridlock. But I also know the value and promise of compromise. Its benefits are uplifting, and it's a way for us to meet the needs of our community. Thank you. I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
All right, and now we will hear from Sarah Anderson.
Again, thank you to the hosts, the people that are here tonight participating in this process. It's great to see so many people here. I am very proud of the work that we did in the last legislative session. We were able to pass a $5.5 billion investment in transportation, as well as funding our schools by $605 million increase. And on top of that, making sure that our businesses have a friendly climate so that they can grow and thrive here and provide the good paying jobs that we rely on in this area. Something that I didn't mention earlier, I am married to my husband Paul for 20 years. He is a physics teacher in the Buffalo School District. We have one son named Cole, and he attends Kimberly Lane in Wayzata School District. And I think about him every day that I go to the Capitol. I drop him off at school, and I think about him and the state that I want to leave for him. And that's a state that I have loved and enjoyed, and making sure that it's strong, that when he graduates from college, that he has a job here, that he can live here and raise a family here, much like all of us have done that are here in this room. And I think that's key, but we need to be looking at what we are doing for the economy to make it lasting for the long haul. So those are some of my things that I've been focusing in on at the Capitol. On top of that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm endorsed by the Twin West Chamber of Commerce. That's our local Chamber of Commerce. The Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. I've also been endorsed by the long-term care providers. These are individuals that provide care to our senior citizens across the state, as well as a host of other organizations that have recognized my work at the Capitol. Some of them being the Medical Alley. I received the Spirit of the Alley Award. These are companies that build the medical innovations that will save lives down the road. I've also been recognized for my work on organ donation, making sure that more people participate in that process, which I'm going to give my plugs since John has been giving plugs for everything under the sun. If you are not a donor, please do so. Next time you get your license renewed, become a donor. You are saving lives and helping a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. And then we will hear from Patti Meier, House District 44B.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming tonight, everyone. If elected to represent this district, I will look for common ground and common sense proposals for the hard-working, tax-paying families in this district. I will support funding for critical programs like education to make sure that no one is left behind and every child has the opportunities to succeed to their greatest potential. I will work to improve the business climate, to keep our high wage earners from leaving this state, and to keep the brightest college grads right here in Minnesota by encouraging businesses to locate here with good paying jobs and to work with our existing businesses to stop the migration of business out of this state. When our economy is strong and vibrant, we're all strong, as I've mentioned before. I promise to work with the people of my district to the best of my ability, to listen to them, to solve their problems, whether they're a Democrat or they're a Republican, because I'm elected to represent the people of the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sean Applebaum.
I'm thankful to be from this community and incredibly honored to represent it at the Capitol. We have award-winning public schools, beautiful natural resources, and a thriving small business environment. But we can do even better. We have to do more to help women, seniors, young families, small businesses, entrepreneurs, veterans, just to name a few. We have to build and sustain an economy that works for everyone, where every Minnesotan has a chance to be successful. We need strong, creative, and energetic leaders who have the right vision for Minnesota and the courage to stand up and do what's right, even when doing so is unpopular. I will continue to fight for you, to fight for what's best for our community members, and to fight for what's best for all Minnesotans when you continue to send me back to the Capitol time and time again as your hometown representative. Thank you so much, and I believe that the North Star